Welcome to Creative Tien channel. In this video, I'm going to show you how I knit a very simple cardigan from a LK150 knitting machine. And it's basically two pieces of plain knitting, and I'm going to cut and sew them together. The yarn I'm going to use is a Karen cotton cake because this is a big size. It's the number 4 medium worsted weight yarn and about 250 grams. I have 2 balls of this. Total it's more than 1,000 yards or about 1,000 meters. And I think it will be enough for short sleeve cardigan. The first thing, I make a little sample. This is the same yarn in a different color. And I'm trying to test out the fabric with different gauge. I start with the gauge A and then go to 9. And when we look at the back, you see I add some marks. I just cut a piece of yarn and knit it in when I am changing the gauge. So the first part is number A, tension. And then I change to number 9. And I change it to 7 here. In this section, it's tighter. And I think it might be too tight. So that's 7. And the last part is 7.5. And I think I will go with a 7.51 because 7 seems a little bit tight. And after you knit the sample, make sure you steam it or block it the way you want to wash it. I just use a steam iron, and I'm going to measure my calculation from this section. So here is my inspiration, and this one fits me, so I will just measure from this cardigan. Basically, I just want one big rectangle piece for the back and 2 rectangle pieces for the front. And because this one is done in sideways, so when you look at the back piece, it actually knits from this way up. So when we look at the sample, we will knit sideways. From bottom to the top is about 23 inches. And from left to the right is about 29 inches. So that's the size I will knit. So that's my basic calculation. According to my sample, every inch I have 4 stitches and 5.5 rows, and that's with the tension 7.5 on the carriage and upper tension number 7. And the pieces I'm going to knit, the first one is sideways from sleeve to sleeve, so that's about 23 inches by 29 inch rectangle. And then I will need 2 smaller pieces for the front. I will cast down about 92 stitches, so it will be 23 inches here, and then about 160 rows. You can make it longer and more stitches because we are going to cut it, so it's not that critical. But you can also adjust the final length by the trimming, the size of the trimming. So that's the back piece. For the front piece, I'm just going to use the plain stockinette and not any fancy stitches. And I will knit 2 pieces up and down, not sideways. So I have 13 inches here. That's about 52 stitches and 127 rows. That's for 23 inches. And I will need 2 pieces of this rectangle before we cut and sew. And one more thing is about the content of the yarn. This one has cotton, and cotton tend to shrink, so you can knit it a little bit bigger in the beginning. If you have washable wool, it tends to extend after you wash it and become larger, so you can make it smaller when you are casting on. And that's my basic cast on with waste yarn, and I'm going to change to the main yarn and start knitting just plain stockinette stitches. So I change my counter back to 000, and I'm going to start knitting 160 rows with my main yarn. When the piece is about to hit the floor, you have to be careful and move the weight up so it has enough weight on the top. The tension will be correct. And then we can keep kneading. Now I have 160 rolls. I'm going to put waste yarn and take it off the machine. And we will do the same for the two smaller pieces for the front of the cardigan. And this will be 52 stitches and 127 rows. Now this is the back side of the cardigan. I'm going to trace the outline to make my own sewing pattern. And I just use tracing paper and pencil. If you don't have tracing paper, you can use any type of paper. It really doesn't matter. I trace with pencil first, and then I'm going to use darker marker to trace over it. And I only need half of it because it's symmetrical. So I'm just going to draw one side of it. And you can always modify it to fit you better. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as the garment you are tracing from. That's half of the back side, and this is half of the front side. And I want to make sure front and back will match up, so you can overlay on top and make any adjustment before you ink it or cut it. I also use a ruler and marker to outline the shape and make sure the front and back matches. And now we are ready to cut it up. I didn't add seam allowance, that will be extra. We only need a half side because we can flip the top for the other side. You can try different stitch pattern or using some punch card to have fancy pattern design, and then you can use the pattern to cut it up so it will fit. And that's the 3 pieces after I steam iron it. Now I have knitted pieces. I have my pattern piece. I just pin the pattern on top of the knitted fabric. And I'm going to trace the outline with the disappearing ink pen so I can start sewing. And I'm just using a regular sewing machine to sew the outline. And I can sew it 2 times. Here I sew it once. You can see the sewing line. And I'm going to go over it again so I have 2 lines to make sure it's secure. And after that, I'm going to cut the fabric, maybe 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch from the sewing lines. I'm just using a straight stitch because we don't need it to be stretchy for this sweater. So I don't need to use zigzag. And you can also use serger, it will be nice too. But the basic straight stitch for the old Singer machine works well for me. You can see the sewing line. This is the neck, shoulder. So this is the part 1 of the 2-part video. In the next video, we are going to cut the fabric and add a trim to finish up the cardigan. Thank you for watching today, and see you in the next video.